Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. I may look a little bit different because I'm dressed more, I guess, I dressed up more than usual. And it's because I'll be at actually the White House later today for a signing ceremony for the Respect for Marriage Act. As many of you guys might know, the Respect for Marriage Act, I think, is a hugely consequential bill. Some of kind of what's in it is that it would codify same-sex as well as interracial marriage. So I think it does a lot, especially against the backdrop of Republicans trying to overturn these rights. We remember Clarence Thomas in the Dobbs decision. He basically said that he wouldn't just stop at abortion, it would also include things like contraception, interracial marriage, voting rights. And so I think a lot of these things are really at stake here. And so this bill is going to do a lot to protect it on the federal level. So it's hugely consequential. I think we also shouldn't forget when I'm going to this event, at least I'm not forgetting that while this bill did get passed, we should never forget that 169 House Republicans voted against this bill and 36 Senate Republicans, including Mitch McConnell, who's in an interracial marriage, voted against this bill. So I think, I was talking about this last night with Rachel Vindman, who I got dinner with. It's these Republicans who are like Mitch McConnell, like Clarence Thomas, who are in an interracial marriage, who voted against this bill. And I personally can't think of a single reason why they would do it other than they don't want the American people to enjoy the same rights that they do. They benefit from interracial marriage, and they think that, for the American people, they don't deserve to be in one. I think it's sad. I'm not quite sure what the rationale or what the logic is behind voting against this when you're in an interracial marriage yourself, but it's really confusing. And just even on, same-sex marriage, for a lot of this country, I think we all remember a time when that wasn't allowed, but now it's, our neighbors, it's our friends, it's really a lot of people who we see up in our lives who are LGBTQ, who have come out. And I think the Republican Party, it's like this lack of welcomeness, this lack of empathy, this lack of kindness, lack of love. And I wish, no matter how big the policy differences are, we could all return to a time when both parties could at least agree on something as basic as, respecting your neighbor, respecting someone for how they choose to identify, respecting someone for who they marry, whether it be, same-sex or interracial. And so I think, we should never forget that these Republicans have done a lot to, I think, not only take away our rights, starting with abortion, but also attempt to, strip other rights too, like interracial and same-sex marriage. And so I think that's important. And then one other point on this bill, I think this is a good first step. There's been a lot of great commentary about how, this is just one first step in codifying our rights. We have to keep fighting because the Supreme Court will still try to tear away those rights. And I think Jonathan Capehart from the Washington Post, and who hosts the Sunday Show with Jonathan Capehart on MSNBC, summed it up really well in one of his recent columns in the Washington Post about how this bill isn't everything. It's a good first step. It's hugely consequential, but it doesn't achieve nearly enough. And we have to keep fighting. And he writes, and I just pulled out a quote from his Washington Post column, quote, "What the act does not do is require states to issue marriage licenses in contravention of state law. This is for now the province of Obergefell. So same-sex couples living in states where they couldn't legally marry post-Obergefell would now have to go to another state where it's legal if they want to marry." So I think that perfectly sums up kind of the stakes of this bill. If the Supreme Court were to overturn those rights, I think, same-sex marriage still isn't fully protected, but nonetheless, I think today is a great day to celebrate. I'm definitely privileged and honored and very, very grateful to go to the White House for this signing ceremony. It's going to be cold because it's going to be outside, but I'll try to take a lot of pictures and send it on Twitter. So if you're following me on Twitter, I'm at VictorShe2020, and I'll try to post some updates throughout the day. So that's the first thing that's on my mind, and that's going to be, I think it starts at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, and hopefully some of the networks will televise it because it's such a big moment. So that's the first thing I'm paying attention to. The second thing I'm paying attention to in the news is not other than Marjorie Taylor Greene. Over the weekend, she spoke to a group of young Republicans in New York. There aren't many out there for what it's worth. And she said that January 6th would have worked out if she and Steve Bannon planned it together. And then, yesterday she came out and walked it back, saying that she was just being sarcastic, that her comments were purely sarcasm. And she was telling the White House and Democrats that they should learn how to be, how to tell sarcasm. And, for me, at least, there's nothing sarcastic about this. She, if we remember, after the election, she came out right before January 6th. She walked out of the White House and she basically said, we had a great planning session. We had a great meeting about this January 6th insurrection. She was right in it, planning with top Trump level officials. She was in it. She knew what was happening. And she knew that this was happening. She was in the planning sessions. And so I think it's important to remember, whatever she says, she can't walk it back. None of us should forget her past. She had an active role in planning January 6th. And I don't think we should expect her not to plan another insurrection if that does happen. And so, for all of us, whatever Marjorie Taylor Greene says, it's just more absurdities. And she's someone who I think really believes in her comments. And so I think her pattern of constantly trying to denigrate democracy should be a clear indication that her comments were not sarcasm. It was not a joke. And even if it was a joke, I don't think it's funny to talk about overthrowing the government, especially when you're talking to the next generation of leaders. They need to know what good leaders are. They need to know what people who belong in government represent, what they should act like. They shouldn't have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene representing them who want to overthrow the government. And so I think that's one interesting development. The next one that I'm paying attention to is something that has really, I think, captured the attention of a lot of young people, and that's Sam Bankman-Fried. And he's the founder and former CEO of FTX, which is a crypto, or I guess was a crypto exchange firm. That's something that my generation is really, I think, interested in. Crypto, FTX, Bitcoin, all of those things are interesting things for my generation. It's, I think, a new market that a lot of people are paying attention to. But basically, Sam Bankman-Fried, he was arrested yesterday for violations of many things, including securities laws, securities fraud, money laundering, wire fraud. And this comes after, he was found cheating investors. And after an effort to, I think, walk back some of his comments, he gave an interview to Andrew Sorkin Ross at the New York Times. He, basically said how much he regrets his decisions, how bad he feels for the people who he frauded. And it also comes in the light of the fact that he was supposed to testify in front of Congress shortly. I think it was supposed to be this week or next week, but he was supposed to testify about what he did. But he was arrested in the Bahamas, and even people in Congress who were expecting him to testify said that they still want him to come in. They still want him to. They still want to get to the bottom of what happened, because at the end of the day, I think accountability matters, and I hope this sends a message to future generations about thinking twice when making decisions. It's not just Sam Bankman-Fried who frauded people. Just the other day, Elizabeth Holmes and her partner Sunny Balwandi also got put in jail for their effort to fraud investors over Theranos, and their fraudulent wrongdoing with trying to test patients and frauding investors over a false product. And so I think you have this pattern of people who try to fraud people in pursuit of personal gain, in pursuit of profit. But at the end of the day, I think justice, the rule of law reigns. And I hope this sends a strong message to future leaders who try to do these things, basically that you're not going to be able to get away with it as easy as you think. One other good piece of news, and then a bit of light piece of news. The first piece of good news that I saw this morning is that the inflation is actually easing. And so right now, the inflation percentage is at 7.1%. Yes, it's not where we want it to be, but it's much lower than the end of 2021. And just compared to October, it's down 0.6%. So in October, it was 7.7%. Now it's 7.1%. And we're seeing inflation getting lower. Prices are lowering. Again, this is not where we want to be. I know many families out there are still struggling from inflation. I don't discount that reality, but prices on average across the country are going down. Gas prices are going down. Unemployment is going down. And so you're seeing a lot of good things, I think, with the economy right now. And it's important to remember, it really started going down after the Inflation Reduction Act was passed this summer. That's a bill that every Democrat voted for, and that's a bill that every Republican voted against. And so when we think about what's happening with our economy, Republicans really have had no role in trying to make this economy better. And in fact, we all remember during the campaign trail, they all said, oh, if we take control, we would, have a plan to combat inflation. But guess what? They have control of the House, and they still have no plan to combat inflation. And they seem hell-bent on doing everything they can to try to suppress what the Biden administration is trying to do. So I think, Republicans still have no plan. There is nothing that they're trying to do. Democrats, I think, and President Biden are doing all that they can to ease inflation. We're starting to see the results right now. So that's good news. So a bit of light piece of news that I saw yesterday that captured my eye is a great article in the Washington Post about how my generation, Generation Z, as you know, are using things like emojis and using words and lack of punctuation in the workplace, and it's confusing older generation. So, for instance, the article mentioned the word slay. And, anyone who knows slay means that basically it means, you did a great job, you knocked it out of the park, you were on fire. Slay is a word that a lot of young people are using that I think are confusing older people in the workplace. And this piece said that the unique way that generation interacts is also causing miscommunication, misunderstandings, because Gen Zers aren't afraid to include maybe an emoji at the end of their sentences, or maybe they aren't afraid to, put in not put in a comma or not put in a period at the end of a sentence. This article also talked about how Generation Z tends to split up their messages. So whereas older generations would send a long paragraph message and call at the end of the day, Generation Z tends to do many messages at a time. And so I think that's throwing off the traditional workplace. And I think it's interesting. I want to hear all of your comments and see what you think about this new way that Generation Z is approaching the workplace and approaching work and communication work. But for me, I think it's an interesting balance, because I think for Gen Z, we often like to have fun. The traditional model of, I think, work is life and life is work just doesn't apply for Gen Z. I think there's more of a balance for Gen Z. We like to have fun. And I think at the same time, we also have to learn, with this article, how to be serious, how to conduct ourselves in the proper decorum at a workplace. But I think at the same time, older generations, I think, have a level of decorum expected in the workplace that doesn't align perhaps with Gen Z. I think older people have to maybe have more of an effort to listen to Gen Z. I think the workplace is only getting younger. We saw this with the pandemic. Workplace culture, I think, is changing because of things like the pandemic, because of things like younger generations. I don't think the workplace is going to be the same. And so I think it's up to young people to know, that work isn't necessarily all fun and games. I think that there is fun, to be had at work. And for older people, I think to start listening to these younger people who are coming into their office spaces, because it's not going to be the same. They have very different worldviews, very different ways of seeing the world. And I think this is a conversation that should be had in the workplace. And I think workplace culture and the norms and the values that each workplace, institutes, is going to be different across the board. But I think that has to be the conversation, establishing workplace culture, workplace norms. And that comes by listening to people and seeing who is a part of your company, who is a part of your organization. And then I think finding the ways to cultivate those communities and really bring the best out of them. So I'm curious to hear what you all have to say about this new way of approaching work from Generation Z, and if you've had maybe a similar experience. Maybe you've had interns who are younger than you and maybe have caused some miscommunication. How have you dealt with that? What have you found to work best in bridging that generational divide? Okay, so let's get into a quick deep dive of the week. And this is really talking about someone who I think represents the best of public service, and that is Dr. Anthony Fauci. I'm sure all of you have heard him and his great public service. And the reason I'm doing this is because over the weekend, Elon Musk tweeted this really, I think, disgusting and absurd tweet saying, quote, "My pronouns are prosecute/Fauci." I'm not going to give it too much attention, but it's wrong on every level. First of all, this is deeply offensive to the LGBTQ community. I'm just speaking on friends who do identify as LGBTQ, and they've said that because Elon effectively mocked the use of gender pronouns, it's basically seen as transphobic, homophobic. And I agree. I think any use of when Ted Cruz says my pronouns are expletive, or Elon Musk saying my pronouns are prosecute Fauci, it's really making a mockery of gender pronouns. And for a tech company especially, I think, where I think diversity really is supposed to shine through, you're supposed to have a wide array of voices that is supposed to bring people together on the platform. This is really dividing people further, and I think spreading homophobia, transphobia, and I think that's really disturbing. And so I know a lot of my friends who are a part of the LGBTQ community are very offended by this. And second, this tweet is also seen as deeply offensive to the medical community as well, and for good reason. I pulled out a tweet. The infectious disease department at Emory University said, "This is antithetical to what we stand for, insulting science, infectious disease, and people with trans/non-binary identities who suffer from enough stigma. Other medical professionals have already left the platform too because of this, as well as Twitter no longer enforcing COVID misinformation and disinformation policies." And I think on all levels, you're seeing Elon Musk really take this platform to really bad degrees. And I tweeted something out on Sunday basically saying that, Elon Musk represents the best of public service, and that, I hate to break it to you, Elon, but you stand no chance against someone who is as intellectual, as courageous, as, as just dedicated to public service as Dr. Fauci. And personally, for me, I saw an entire bot army come after me. I got about 113,000 likes, but there were thousands of comments, and they were all Elon Musk bots saying that Dr. Fauci is a traitor, saying that he is disloyal to the country. He should be impeached. He should be put in jail. And to me, it's sad, not because I got attacked personally, but I think it's sad because you have this right-wing media apparatus. You have right-wing pundits. You have Elon Musk. You have Tucker Carlson painting such a false narrative of Dr. Fauci. That's sad in and of itself. But the sadder reality, I think, is this lack of critical thinking. People believe in them. And that's what I found really depressing, is you had thousands of people come after me, believe in things that Elon Musk and other right-wing people say about Dr. Fauci. And so I thought I would set the record straight about Dr. Fauci. If you know anyone who, I think knows Dr. Fauci, who wants to learn more about him, I think hopefully this is a good insight into what this man actually stands for and how he is actually someone who can capture a wide array of political viewpoints. So Dr. Fauci, for anyone who needs a reminder, this is someone who has been serving at the NIH's basically National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease since 1984. He served under both Democrats and Republicans, and even received the Presidential Medal of Freedom by, get this, then President George W. Bush, who is a Republican. Since 1984, Dr. Fauci has also advised 7 presidents, that's 7 presidents, both Democrats and Republicans, on various infectious disease. So for anyone who's out there who might be a Republican who are attacking Dr. Fauci right now, they might remember that he was seen as the top medical expert for both Democrats and Republican presidents. President Bush, who was a Republican himself, awarded Dr. Fauci the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So you have Republicans who see Dr. Fauci as someone who is noble, someone who is a valiant, public servant who does such good in this country. And it seems like, until Trump came along, there was no problem with Dr. Fauci. So for those Republicans who are attacking him, they seem to forget that before Trump, they found no problem in him, because Dr. Fauci is truly someone who believes in science and who does his job not for popularity, not for fame, but instead just for science and trying to advance noble causes. Some more tidbits about Dr. Fauci. During his time at the NIH, he's done quite a bit. Just to name a few, he was one of the leading voices combating the HIV and AIDS epidemic, being the key architect of the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief, which saved millions of people across the world. He also helped combat Ebola and Zika, and of course, COVID-19. And on top of all of this, Dr. Fauci still engages in research and publishes in scientific journals. And get this, as of 2022, Dr. Fauci is the 44th most cited living researcher and is ranked 9th out of 3.3 million authors in the field of immunology. So this isn't someone who walks, who just talks the talk. He walks the walk. He really puts his mouth to his, actions. And I think it's really, really indicative of someone who is an expert in this field, who Republicans and Democrats both trusted before Trump, but it was really Trump that I think started this just unleashing of attack on Dr. Fauci. And it's sad because he's someone who is, he's going to retire at the end of this year, which is sad, I think, for public service. And I think it's also, sad for this country where you want facts to reign. You want people to respect people in government. You don't want people questioning the legitimacy of just public servants trying to do their jobs. But unfortunately, that's the reality. And so I hope that we all get a better sense of Dr. Fauci. This is a man who is a really remarkable person. I'm sad to see him leave office. I know a lot of people are, and I know that his successor will be just as good. And I hope Republicans will finally learn how to respect the people in government, because they certainly aren't doing the jobs in government. So that is all I have for you today. I will be at the White House later today for the Respect for Marriage Act, so stay tuned for pictures. I'll be back tomorrow with a very special episode. You're not going to want to miss it. I'll be with the first Gen Zer in Congress, Maxwell Frost, who is so amazing. I met him on the campaign trail and got to talk with him. He is so great. So in the comment section, let me know if you're excited about that episode. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. It's going to be at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. I will be with Maxwell Frost talking about his recent win, what it's like being a Gen Zer in Congress now, or I guess, about to be in Congress, and some of the experience and its challenges, and what he expects to achieve in these coming months and years. And I have a feeling it's just the start. So tune in tomorrow for Maxwell Frost. And on Friday, we'll have Glenn Kirshner on to talk about the legal news of the week. So tune in on Friday as well. Thursday will be question and answer. So let me know what your questions are, and I'll try to get to them on Thursday. In the meantime, Please be safe. Please be healthy. I will see you tomorrow again at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on Politicon's YouTube channel, youtube.com/Politicon. Subscribe, like this video, and hope to share with your friends and family. I will see you tomorrow and have a great day.